My engagement collapsed when I learned my dad and my fiancé betrayed me by secretly sleeping together for 3 shocking months. I, a 31-year-old male, had been with Sarah, a 29-year-old female, for almost 5 years when all this went down. We met at this stupid corporate party. I was doing IT work for her company, and she was in marketing. Not exactly a romantic first meeting or anything, just typical office small talk that somehow turned into coffee, then dinner, and, well, you know how it goes. Things were pretty good between us. Like, we had our fights and stuff, who doesn't? But nothing major. We got engaged about 8 months before all this happened. I didn't do anything fancy, just took her to this little Italian place where we had our first date, got down on one knee, all that classic stuff. She cried, I almost dropped the ring, and the old couple next to us bought us champagne. It was nice, you know. My mom passed away from cancer 4 years ago, and that hit our family pretty hard. She was the glue that kept everything together, always planning family stuff and making sure everyone stayed in touch. Dad took it really rough. They'd been married for 35 years, high school sweethearts and all that. He kind of shut down for a while, barely left the house except for work. Sarah was actually really great during that time, helped with the funeral arrangements and everything. She'd even go check on Dad when I was stuck at work, bring him groceries and stuff. Yeah, I know what you're thinking now, we know why, right? But back then, I just thought I had the most caring fiancé in the world. Anyway, this particular day started like any other. It was a Wednesday in July, hot as balls outside. I remember being at work, dealing with some idiot who couldn't figure out how to reset their password for like the millionth time, when Sarah texted, saying Dad had invited us over for dinner. This wasn't unusual or anything. We'd go over there probably once or twice a month. Dad's cooking was actually pretty decent. Mom made sure he could cook before she passed, and I always felt kind of bad about him being alone in that big house. Looking back, there were probably signs I missed. Dad had been weirdly cheerful lately, like the past few months. He'd started going out more, even joined some gym or whatever. I remember telling Sarah how good it was to see him finally moving on with his life. She just smiled and said, yeah, it was great to see him happy again. God, I was such a freaking idiot. I got home from work around 5:30, changed out of my work clothes, and Sarah was already there, getting ready. She was acting kind of weird now that I think about it, kept changing her outfit, fixing her makeup more than usual. I even made some dumb joke about how it was just dinner with Dad, not a date with the president. She laughed it off, but it was that fake laugh she did when she was nervous about something. The drive to Dad's place was about 20 minutes. Sarah was quiet the whole way, just kept checking her phone. I figured she was dealing with work stuff. She'd been stressed about some big marketing campaign or whatever. The radio was playing that stupid Olivia Rodrigo song that was everywhere last summer, and Sarah usually sang along to it, but this time, she just stared out the window. We got to Dad's place around 7. The house looked the same as always. Mom's flower beds were still there, though they weren't as nice as when she took care of them. Dad tried his best, but he didn't have her green thumb. The porch light was on, and I could smell garlic bread as soon as we got out of the car. Dad was making his lasagna, which was usually a good sign because it was his go-to comfort food when he wanted to talk about something serious. I remember thinking maybe he was going to tell us he'd started dating someone. That would have explained why he seemed happier lately. Expletive. I even remember telling Sarah on the walk up to the door that I hoped that was it because Dad deserved to find someone new. She just squeezed my hand really tight and didn't say anything. Dad answered the door in his fancy cooking apron, the one Mom got him as a joke that says kiss the cook with like a million wine stains on it. He hugged Sarah first, which he'd never done before. Usually it was just a wave or maybe a quick side hug if we were celebrating something. But this was a full-on hug. I didn't think much of it at the time, just figured he was in a good mood. The house smelled amazing. Garlic bread, tomato sauce, that kind of homey smell that usually makes you feel all warm and fuzzy inside. We went straight to the kitchen, and Dad had actually set the table nice with the good plates Mom used to use for special occasions. There was even wine already poured out. If someone had told me then what was about to happen, I would have laughed in their face. Everything seemed so normal, you know, just another family dinner, but I guess that's how it always is. You never see the knife until it's already in your back. Writing this now makes me want to puke, remembering how expletive clueless I was. So yeah, there we were, sitting at my dad's dinner table, eating his lasagna like it was just another Wednesday night. Looking back now, the tension in the room was so thick you could cut it with a knife, but I was too stupid to notice it then. Funny how your brain just doesn't want to see the obvious sometimes, right? The weirdest part? Both of them were acting like everything was totally normal, but in that fake way that makes your gut feel weird. You know that feeling when something's off, but you can't put your finger on it, like when you walk into your apartment and something's been moved, but you don't know what. Yeah, that kind of feeling. Dad kept refilling everyone's wine glasses, which wasn't like him at all. He's usually pretty strict about drinking, especially since Mom died. He had a rough patch right after we lost her, where he was hitting the bottle pretty hard. But here he was, making sure nobody's glass got even close to empty. Should have been red flag number 1, I guess. Sarah was picking at her food, barely eating anything. This was weird because Dad's lasagna was her favorite. She usually had seconds, sometimes even thirds. She kept glancing at Dad when she thought I wasn't looking, doing this weird thing with her napkin where she was basically shredding it into tiny pieces under the table. I noticed, but I thought maybe she was stressed about work or something. God, I was so expletive blind. The conversation was weird too. Usually we'd talk about normal stuff, work, shows we were watching, maybe some family gossip, but this time it was all surface-level love. Dad kept starting sentences and not finishing them, and Sarah was way too interested in the new curtains Dad had put up in the living room. Like, who the expletive cares about curtains that much? I remember there was this moment, right after we finished eating, where Dad got up to clear the plates. Sarah jumped up to help him, which wasn't unusual. She always helped with dishes when we came over. But the way they moved around each other in the kitchen, it was like a dance they'd practiced. They knew exactly where the other person was going to be, never bumped into each other once. At the time, I was just thinking how nice it was that they got along so well. Jesus expletive Christ, I'm an idiot. Then Dad brought out dessert. He'd made Mom's apple pie recipe. This should have been another red flag because Dad never made Mom's apple pie. It was like this sacred thing, you know, he hadn't made it once since she died. But there it was, sitting on the table, looking perfect with vanilla ice cream on the side, just like Mom used to serve it. I remember taking a bite and saying it tasted just like Mom's. Dad got this look on his face, kind of like he'd been punched in the gut. Sarah wouldn't even touch hers, just kept pushing it around her plate with her fork. The ice cream was melting, making this sad little puddle around the pie. That's when Dad cleared his throat and said those words that still make my stomach turn. We need to talk to you about something. Sarah suddenly got really interested in her napkin again, wouldn't look at me at all. You know how in movies when something bad is about to happen, they sometimes do that thing where all the background noise fades away, and everything goes into slow motion? That's exactly what it felt like. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears. The ticking of Mom's old clock on the wall seemed super loud all of a sudden. Dad had this look on his face, kind of like when he had to tell me Mom's cancer was terminal, that same I'm about to destroy your world expression. Sarah had started crying silently, tears just rolling down her face while she stared at the table. I remember thinking maybe Dad's sick, or maybe Sarah's pregnant, or literally any other possibility except what was actually happening. Because who the expletive would ever think their dad and their fiancée were about to tell them they'd been sleeping together? The pie was still sitting there, getting soggy from the melted ice cream, Mom's special recipe that she'd only make for important family moments. I guess this counted as an important family moment, right? Just not the kind she would have ever imagined. The worst part? I can't even eat apple pie anymore. Can't even look at it without feeling sick. They didn't just ruin my family and my relationship, they ruined expletive dessert too. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The bomb hadn't dropped yet. We were still sitting there, the three of us, with that damn pie melting on the table, and I was still blissfully unaware that my life was about to implode. Dad was about to start talking, and I was sitting there like an idiot, actually concerned about what might be wrong with them. Sometimes I wish I could go back to that moment, right before they told me, just freeze time there when things still made sense, when my dad was still my dad, and my fiancée was still the woman I thought I'd spend my life with. But you can't freeze time, can you? You just have to sit there and let the love hit the fan. Expletive. This part is hard to write. I've been sitting here, staring at my screen for like 20 minutes, trying to figure out how to even start. Guess I'll just jump right in. So we're sitting there in Dad's living room. They'd insisted we move somewhere more comfortable after the whole pie disaster. More comfortable, my a-hole. Pretty sure they just wanted to make sure I wasn't holding any sharp objects when they dropped their little bombshell. Dad was in his old recliner, Mom's chair actually. She used to sit there every evening, reading her mystery novels. Sarah and I were on the couch, but she was sitting as far away from me as physically possible, while still technically being on the same piece of furniture. Should have noticed that too, I guess. Dad kept opening and closing his mouth like a fish out of water. Sarah was full-on crying now, not even trying to hide it, and stupid expletive me, I was getting seriously worried, like, in my head, I'm thinking someone's dying or something. Wish that had been it, honestly. Finally, Dad starts talking. Son, there's something Sarah and I need to tell you. He actually reached over and took her hand when he said it. Just reached over and grabbed it like it was the most natural thing in the world. My brain kind of short-circuited for a second, but I still wasn't getting it. Then Sarah starts in with this whole "we never meant for this to happen" speech. You know, the kind of love people say when they've done something terrible but want to make themselves feel better about it. And I'm sitting there thinking, what the expletive could be so bad that they're both acting like someone died? Then Dad just says it, right out loud. We've been seeing each other romantically for about 3 months now. You ever been punched in the gut, like, really hard? This was worse, way worse. It was like someone had reached inside my chest and just started ripping stuff out. I couldn't breathe right, the room started spinning a little. And you know what the first thing out of my mouth was? I actually asked, what do you mean by seeing each other? Like a expletive idiot, as if there was some innocent explanation for why my dad was holding my fiancée's hand while she sobbed on his couch. They exchanged this look, this expletive look, like they were deciding how much to tell me. That's when I knew. That look said everything. They'd been zexing. My dad and my fiancé had been zexing behind my back for 3 months. Then, because I apparently hate myself, I asked, how many times? Don't ask me why I wanted to know that. Maybe I was hoping they'd say once, that it was a mistake, that they were drunk or something. But they wouldn't answer at first, which told me everything I needed to know. Sarah started trying to explain how it happened. Something about how she'd been going over to check on Dad more often after I mentioned being worried about him. How they'd started talking more, getting closer, how one thing led to another. I wanted to throw up. The worst part? Dad was sitting there nodding along like she was telling some cute story about how they met, like this was just another expletive love story and not them nuking my entire life. I remember looking around the room while they were talking. All the family photos on the walls, pictures of me and Mom, their wedding photo, even a picture from the day I proposed to Sarah. Dad had taken it right after she said yes. It was all there, staring down at us while they sat there, destroying everything those pictures represented. Then Sarah says, and I'll never forget this, she says, we didn't want to hurt you. I actually laughed, like full-on hysterical laughter, because what the expletive else do you do when your fiancé tells you she didn't want to hurt you right after admitting she's been zexing your dad? Dad tried to jump in then, started saying some love about how these things just happen and how you can't help who you fall for, like he was quoting some expletive Hallmark movie about star-crossed lovers or something, not talking about how he'd been zexing his son's fiancée. I remember standing up at that point, my legs were shaking so bad I almost fell over. Sarah reached out to steady me and I lost it, jumped back like she was on fire or something. The look on her face, like she was the one who had the right to be hurt. That's when the anger hit. You know that saying, seeing red? I always thought it was just a figure of speech. It's not. Everything literally had this red tinge to it. I could feel my pulse in my eyeballs. My hands were clenched so tight my fingernails were cutting into my palms. They were both talking at once then, trying to explain, trying to justify, trying to, I don't even know what. I couldn't really hear them over the sound of blood rushing in my ears. All I could think about was how many times they'd been together while I was at work, how many times she'd gone to check on him and ended up in his bed, in my mom's bed. That's when I threw up, right there in my dad's living room, just turned and puked all over his fancy carpet. Probably ruined it, but expletive him. He ruined my life, I ruined his carpet. Seems fair, right? The next few minutes are kind of a blur. I remember Sarah trying to help clean up and me yelling at her not to expletive touch me. I remember Dad going to get paper towels, like this was just some normal accident at a family dinner, like we could just clean this up and everything would be fine. But nothing was fine. Nothing would ever be fine again. My dad, my expletive dad, had been zexing with the woman I was supposed to marry, the woman who'd helped me pick out my mom's headstone, the woman who was supposed to be the mother of my children someday. And there they were, standing in front of me, holding hands like teenagers caught making out at prom, not like a father and future daughter-in-law who'd been having an affair for 3 months while I worked 60-hour weeks trying to save up for our wedding. That's when I knew, really knew, that everything was over. Not just my engagement, not just my relationship with my dad, everything. My whole life as I knew it was done. Nothing would ever be the same again. And the expletive up part? They looked relieved, like finally telling me was this huge weight off their shoulders, like they could finally stop sneaking around and just be together. They dropped this nuclear bomb on my life, and they looked expletive relieved about it. After I finished puking all over Dad's carpet, still proud of that by the way, everything happened really fast. It's weird how your brain works in moments like that. Like some parts are totally fuzzy, but other tiny details are crystal clear. I remember looking at them both and feeling this weird sense of calm, like, you know that moment in movies right before someone goes absolutely batshit? That kind of calm. Dad was still holding those expletive paper towels, and Sarah was doing that stupid thing she does when she's nervous, where she keeps tucking her hair behind her ears over and over. First thing I did was look at my dad and say, "You want her? Keep her. We're expletive done." Just like that, didn't even raise my voice. Mom would have been proud of my self-control, I guess, though she probably wouldn't have been too thrilled about the whole husband zexing our son's fiancé situation. Then I turned to Sarah. She was wearing this blue dress I'd bought her for her birthday last year. Cost me like $200, which was a lot for me back then. All I could think about was whether she'd worn it for my dad before. Whether he'd taken it off her. Expletive. My brain was going places I really didn't want it to go. Give me your keys, I said, just like that. She started crying harder, didn't think that was possible, and fumbling with her keychain. You know the kind girls have, with like 50 different things hanging off it? Yeah, that kind. She had this little photo keychain I'd gotten her with a picture of us from our first vacation together. Looking at it made me want to puke again. She couldn't get the key off, her hands were shaking too bad. Watching her struggle with it was making me even angrier, so I just grabbed the whole keychain from her. Our fingers touched for a second, and I jerked back like I'd been burned. I started working on getting my apartment key off myself. Dad tried to step in then, started saying something about how we should all calm down and talk about this rationally. Can you expletive believe that? Like we're discussing what movie to watch or something. Not the fact that he'd been zexing my fiancé behind my back. I got the key off finally, handed her back the keychain, told her I'd pack her love and she could come get it when I was done. She started saying something about how she could explain everything, how it wasn't what I thought. I just laughed, like what the expletive did she think this was? What possible explanation could make this okay? The whole time this is happening, I'm standing in this room surrounded by family photos. There's one right above the TV of me and Sarah at Christmas last year. We're wearing matching ugly sweaters, and she's kissing my cheek. I remember Dad took that picture. Wonder if they were already zexing then. Wonder if they laughed about it later. Sarah tried to touch my arm. I flinched away so hard I knocked over one of Mom's old vases. It didn't break. Landed on the carpet I just puked on. Dad actually bent down to pick it up, like that was the most important thing happening right then. That's when something really expletive up hit me. They'd been doing this in his house, in the house where I grew up. In the house where my mom died. Did they zexes in my parents' bed? Did they do it on the couch where we used to have family movie nights? These thoughts just kept coming, and I couldn't make them stop. I started heading for the door. Sarah tried to follow me, still crying and saying she was sorry over and over. Sorry for what, exactly? Sorry she zexed my dad, or sorry she got caught? Dad was right behind her saying we needed to talk this through, that we were family. Family, that word made me stop dead in my tracks. I turned around and looked at them both. Family? I said. You want to talk about expletive family? You've been zexing my fiancé for 3 months and you want to talk about family? That's when Dad started crying too. Great. Now they were both standing there crying. Like they were the victims in all this. Like I was the bad guy for not being understanding about their love or whatever the expletive they were calling it. I remember looking at Sarah one last time before I left. She was wearing the engagement ring I'd spent months saving up for. It wasn't anything fancy, couldn't afford anything too expensive back then. But I'd picked it out special, had it sized just right for her. She was twisting it around on her finger, something she did when she was nervous. You can keep the ring, I told her. Sell it, throw it away, give it to your next father-in-law. I don't give a expletive. Yeah, that was mean, but you know what's meaner? Zexing your fiancé's dad. Walking to my car was surreal, like the world was just going on like normal. The neighbor's kid was riding his bike, someone was mowing their lawn. Everything was just normal, except nothing would ever be normal again. I got in my car, started it up. They were both standing in the doorway, watching me. Dad had his arm around Sarah's shoulders. That image is burned into my brain forever. My dad comforting my fiancé after I found out they'd been having an affair, like something out of a expletive up soap opera. As I backed out of the driveway, I could see them through the window. They were hugging, actually, expletive hugging, right there in front of me. That's when I really lost it, punched my steering wheel so hard I think I cracked it. Still hurts when it's cold out. The drive home is mostly a blur. I remember stopping at a gas station to throw up again. The cashier asked if I was okay. I just laughed. Okay? No, I wasn't expletive okay. My dad was zexing my fiancé. How could anything ever be okay again? I got home to my apartment. Everything looked exactly the same. Her shoes by the door, her coffee mug in the sink, her stupid decorative pillows on the couch. All these little pieces of her life mixed up with mine. Going to have to untangle all of that now. Expletive. That first night back at the apartment was expletive wild. You know how in movies when someone's relationship ends, they usually show them drinking themselves stupid or breaking stuff? Well, I didn't do either. Instead, I spent 4 hours organizing her love into boxes, like some kind of trauma-induced cleaning spree. My phone was blowing up the whole time. Had to put it on silent because the constant buzzing was driving me insane. Sarah and Dad were tag-teaming it. One would call, then the other would text, then back to the first one calling again. It was like they were working in shifts or something. I saved some of the texts because I couldn't believe how expletive delusional they were. Here's one from Sarah. Please let me explain. It's not what you think. We never meant to hurt you. Like, what the expletive did she think was going to happen? That I'd be cool with my dad zexing my fiancé? That we'd all laugh about it at Thanksgiving? Dad's messages were even worse, son. I know this is hard to understand, but sometimes life takes unexpected turns. Unexpected turns. Pretty sure don't zexes your kid's fiancé is like basic parenting 101. Around 2 a.m., I found her birth control pills in the bathroom, the fancy ones I'd been paying for because they were the only kind that didn't make her feel sick. Looked at the date. She'd gotten them refilled right around when this love with Dad started. Wonder if she was already planning it then, if she knew she'd need them for him, threw them in the trash so hard the container cracked. The next morning, Sarah's mom called. Not Sarah, she didn't have the guts to come herself. Her mom was actually decent about it, which was weird. She was like, I'm so sorry, I had no idea and I'm ashamed of what she's done. Made me feel even worse somehow, knowing that even her own mother was disgusted with her. I let her mom in to get Sarah's stuff. She brought these big plastic totes, like she was helping someone move to college or something. We didn't talk much while she was packing. What do you even say in that situation? Hey, sorry your daughter turned out to be the kind of person who zexes her fiancé's dad? Found out later that Sarah had told her mom everything the night before. Apparently she'd shown up at their house crying, probably expecting sympathy. Instead, her mom lost her love. Called her every name in the book. Her dad couldn't even look at her. At least someone's parents had some expletive morals. The whole time her mom was there, Sarah kept texting her, asking if I was okay, if I seemed angry, if I was drinking. Like she had any right to be worried about me after what she did. Her mom actually showed me the texts, saying, I think you should see what kind of person she really is. The texts were wild. Sarah was acting like she was the victim somehow, saying love like, I just need him to understand, and Dad and I didn't mean for this to happen. Dad and I, she was calling him Dad. Like, what the actual expletive? She'd been calling him Richard for 5 years, but now, suddenly, he's Dad. I threw up again when I saw that, right in the kitchen sink. Sarah's mom just handed me a paper towel and kept packing. While her mom was gathering stuff from the bedroom, I found Sarah's diary. Never read it before, I'm not that kind of guy. But I sat there staring at it for like 20 minutes, wondering if she'd written about them, if there were details in there I didn't want to know but needed to know. In the end, I gave it to her mom without opening it. Some things you're better off not knowing, right? The photos were the worst part. They were everywhere, on the walls, on the fridge, in frames on every expletive surface. 5 years of memories, all tainted now. Found one from last Thanksgiving, me, Sarah, and Dad, all together, smiling like one big happy family. Wonder if they were already eyeing each other up then. If they were already planning this. Gave all the photos to her mom too. Told her to burn them. Sarah's mom found her wedding planning binder. You know, one of those big ones with all the magazine cutouts and color swatches and love. She started crying when she saw it. Said she'd been so happy when we got engaged, that she'd already started thinking of me as a son. Guess Sarah found a different way to make me family, huh? The calls and texts didn't stop. Dad switched tactics, started sending these long rambling messages about how mom would want us to work through this as a family. Using mom to justify this love. That was a new low. Actually sent him back a text, saying, pretty sure mom didn't want you to zexes my fiancé, and blocked his number. Sarah's messages got more desperate as the day went on, started threatening to come over, saying she'd sleep in her car outside if she had to. That's when her mom stepped in, told her if she tried any of that love, she'd call the cops herself. Never thought I'd be grateful for my ex-future mother-in-law, but here we are. By the time her mom left with all her stuff, it took 3 carloads. Amazing how much love you can accumulate in 5 years. I was exhausted. Not just physically, like soul tired, you know? That feeling like your whole body is just done with everything. The apartment felt weird after. Too big, too empty, too quiet. All her stuff was gone, but I could still smell her perfume everywhere. Still had her favorite coffee creamer in the fridge, her hair ties around the bathroom doorknob. All these little pieces of her life that she left behind, like breadcrumbs leading to nowhere. Called in sick to work for the rest of the week. Couldn't deal with pretending everything was normal. My boss was cool about it, just said, take all the time you need. Wonder what Sarah told her work. Sorry, can't come in today, too busy zexing my fiancé's dad. The worst part? Found out later that some of her stuff in those boxes wasn't even from our apartment. Some of it was from Dad's house. She'd been keeping clothes there. Had her own expletive toothbrush there. They'd been playing house while I was at work, trying to build us a future. Think that's when it really hit me. This wasn't just some one-time thing. They'd been building a whole secret life together, right under my nose, in my dad's house, in my mom's house. Spent that night sitting on the kitchen floor, drinking water because I was afraid if I started drinking anything stronger I wouldn't stop. Reading their messages over and over, like some kind of masochist. Still couldn't make sense of any of it. Still can't. So yeah, just when I thought this whole situation couldn't get any more expletive up, my dad decided to play the concerned parent card, and called the expletive cops on me. Because apparently zexing your son's fiancée is fine, but not answering your phone for a few days, that's when you need to get the authorities involved. It was maybe 4 or 5 days after everything went down. I'd been ignoring both of them completely, their calls, their texts, everything. Was actually starting to feel a tiny bit better, you know? Had cleaned the whole apartment like 3 times, thrown out anything that reminded me of either of them, and was starting to think maybe I could get through this without completely losing my love. Then there's this knock at my door around 8 p.m. Not the normal kind of knock, that cop knock, that just sounds official, you know what I mean? Look through the peephole, and there's 2 officers standing there. One older guy, probably around my dad's age, expletive, hell why did my brain go there? And this younger female officer who looked kind of uncomfortable. I open the door, and the older cop starts with, "Good evening, sir. We're here because your father called, concerned about your well-being." Like it was totally normal, like they got calls every day about guys whose dads were worried about them after stealing their fiancés. The female cop was holding this clipboard, and looking at me like she was trying to decide if I was about to go postal or something. I must have looked pretty rough, hadn't really been sleeping or eating much, probably hadn't shaved in days. "Your father says you haven't been responding to his calls or messages," the older cop continues, like he's telling me my dad's feelings are hurt or something. He's worried you might harm yourself. I just started laughing, not like normal laughter, that kind of laugh that's basically one step away from crying. The cops exchanged this look, like, "Oh great, we got a live one here." Finally got myself under control enough to say, "Did my dad happen to mention why I'm not talking to him?" They both kind of shook their heads, so I told them. Just laid it all out there. My dad's been zexing my fiancée for the past 3 months. Found out about it last week. That's why I'm not answering his calls. You know that moment when someone's whole face changes because they just realize they're in the middle of some Jerry Springer-level drama? Yeah, both cops had that look. The female officer actually said, "Oh expletive," under her breath, then tried to play it off like she was coughing. The older cop's face went from concerned professional to what the actual expletive in about half a second. He started doing this thing where he was scratching his neck and looking everywhere but at me, probably thinking about his own kids, wondering if he could ever do something that expletive up to them. Had to go through this whole thing about whether I was actually suicidal, I wasn't, or planning to hurt anyone. Tempting, but no. They had this checklist they had to go through, standard procedure and all that. The whole time the female cop kept looking at me with this mix of pity and disgust, not at me, but at the situation. The worst part was having to stand there and explain it to 2 complete strangers. Like, these people were just doing their jobs, probably expecting to deal with some guy having a mental breakdown or something. Instead they got front row seats to the love show that was my life. The older cop actually apologized to me, said something like, "I'm sorry you're going through this, son," then immediately looked like he regretted saying son because, well, you know, the whole dad situation. They had to call it in, let the station know everything was fine. Could hear the dispatcher, asking for details, and the female cop just saying, "Situation is complicated. Subject is fine." Probably didn't want to put father's exing son's fiancée in an official police report. Before they left, the older cop handed me this card for a counseling service, said, "You might want to talk to someone professional about all this," then added, kind of quietly so his partner couldn't hear, "If my old man did something like that to me, I'd need someone to talk to." The female cop just gave me this sad smile and said, "Take care of yourself." Could tell she wanted to say more but probably had to keep it professional. They both looked pretty relieved to be leaving though. Can't blame them. After they left, I just stood there in my doorway for like 10 minutes, couldn't decide if I was more angry or embarrassed. Like, it wasn't enough that my dad and fiancé betrayed me, now I had to explain it to the expletive police. Had to stand there while 2 strangers processed how expletive up my life had become. Called dad after that, first time I'd answered any of his attempts to contact me. Just said, "If you ever call the cops on me again, I'll tell everyone what you did. Every single person you know, every friend, every coworker, everyone at church. They'll all know exactly what kind of father you are." He started trying to explain himself again, saying he was just worried about me, that he couldn't bear the thought of me doing something stupid because of their mistake. Their mistake. Like they'd accidentally ordered the wrong takeout or something, not deliberately zexing behind my back for 3 months. Hung up on him mid-sentence, blocked his number again, then went and took the longest shower of my life, like I was trying to wash off the shame of having to tell 2 random cops about how my dad had stolen my fiancée. The cop's business card is still sitting on my counter. Haven't called the number yet, probably should, but how do you even start that conversation with a therapist? Hi, my dad's zexing my fiancée. How many sessions do you think that'll take to fix? Found out later that dad had told the cops I wasn't eating or sleeping, true, and that I'd been acting erratically. Depends on your definition of erratic, I guess. Didn't mention the part where he was the cause of all that. Convenient little detail to leave out, right? The whole thing just made me feel, I don't know, dirty. Like their betrayal was now part of some official record somewhere. Like, somewhere in that police station. There's a report that basically says, guy's dad stole his fiancée. He's taking it pretty hard. Just one more humiliation to add to the pile, I guess. But hey, at least the cops looked more disgusted with them than with me. That's something, right? Small victories and all that love. I'll keep you updated, guys, if something happens. Final update, AITA for cutting off my dad and fiancé after finding out they've been sleeping together? Hey Reddit, a lot of you have been DMing me, asking for updates about my situation with my dad and ex-fiancé, so I figured I'd post one final update to let everyone know how things turned out. This will probably be my last post about this whole mess. First off, thanks for all the support and advice from my previous posts. You guys really helped me get through some dark times, even though some of you had some pretty wild suggestions. No, I didn't hire a skywriter to expose them at a family reunion, lol. So here's where things stand now. I'm doing okay, like, actually okay, not just saying that. Been seeing a therapist, thanks to that cop who gave me the card, and it's helping. Still have days where I want to punch something, but they're getting less frequent. The really wild part, my ex-fiancée Sarah actually outed herself to everyone. She went crying to her best friend, expecting sympathy, and holy expletive, did that backfire. Her friend absolutely lost it on her, and within like 48 hours everyone in our social circle knew what happened. Their reaction was pretty much what you'd expect. She lost most of her friends. They straight up asked her if she'd been zexing any of their dads too. Brutal, but honestly, she deserved it. Her best friend actually reached out to me afterward. We talked for hours on the phone, and she's been really supportive. No, we're not dating or hooking up, since I know some of you will ask. She's just been a good friend through all this. She got cheated on before too, though she said she can't even imagine what it's like when it's your own dad involved. I did meet up with my dad one last time to get some of my mom's things, including her wedding ring. Took a friend with me to make sure I didn't do anything stupid. Dad tried to act all normal at first, but when I handed him my ex's engagement ring and told him he could propose to her with it if he wanted, it finally seemed to hit him how badly he'd expletive up. Too little too late, but whatever. As for Sarah, she's apparently a mess. Moved back in with her parents, who were absolutely disgusted with her, by the way. Lost most of her friends, and from what I hear, she still thinks there's a chance I might forgive her someday. Yeah, not happening. Her parents actually apologized to me, which was weird but kind of nice. The real kicker? Dad and Sarah are still seeing each other. Someone spotted them together in town recently. Guess they figure they might as well, since they've already nuked every relationship in their lives. They've lost most of their friends too. Turns out people aren't super supportive of the whole father zexing son's fiancé thing. Who would have guessed? I've redecorated my apartment, bought a new bed, because, yeah, and got rid of anything that reminded me of either of them. Even got rid of my old couch because I kept wondering if they'd ever, yeah, you get the idea. The place feels different now, but in a good way. Like a fresh start. I told my other friends they don't have to pick sides or avoid Sarah if they don't want to. I'm not trying to control anyone, or make them choose. That kind of petty love just isn't worth the energy. Most of them chose sides anyway, but at least I can say I took the high road there. Some days are still rough. Sometimes I smell her perfume somewhere random and it hits me all over again. Or I'll see something that reminds me of my dad and get angry all over again. But honestly, I'm glad I found out before we got married, before we had kids, before things got even more complicated. So yeah, that's where things stand. Dad and Sarah are together and miserable. Karma's a witch. I'm single and working on myself, and life goes on. Thanks again for all the support, Reddit. You guys helped me realize I wasn't crazy for cutting them both off completely. Edit, holy expletive, this blew up. Thanks for all the awards, but maybe donate to betrayal trauma resources instead. Edit 2, since people keep asking, no, they haven't tried contacting me again. They finally got the message after I threatened to put them both on blast to everyone they know. Edit 3, to the people suggesting I should try to forgive them for my own peace. Respectfully, expletive that. Some things don't deserve forgiveness.